All right, this is our review for test 3 on factoring. So number 1, we have a squared minus 16a plus 63. So our ultimate goal is we're trying to get a negative 16a, and we are adding to do so. And keep in mind when we add, we have the same sign. So we're going to do our 2 parentheses. I'm going to put a at the front of both. And when I look at factors of 63, we're going to use 9 and 7. So we're going to check our outside, inside. My outside is 7a. My inside is 9a. And together, if I add, that gives me 16a. Now my 16 is negative, so I must have a negative 9 and a negative 7a. So my answer would be a minus 9 times a minus 7. And it doesn't matter which parenthesis you are to write first. You can have a minus 7 times a minus 9. Number 2. P squared minus 19p plus 88. So we're trying to get that negative 19p, and we are adding. So we're going to do our 2 parentheses, p's at the front. And with factors of 88, we're going to use 8 and 11. And we're going to check our outside, inside. My outside is 8p, my inside is 11p. And if I add them together, that makes 19p. So with 19 being negative, and keep in mind when you're adding, they must have the same sign. So both 11 and 8 will be negative. So our answer is p minus 11 times p minus 8. Number 3, a squared minus 3a minus 18. So we're trying to get that negative 3a, and we are subtracting to do so. So we're going to have different signs. So we have our 2 parentheses, a's at the front, and then we're going to look at factors of 18. Now, if you need to list your factors, you have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, and you also have 3 and 6. So the 2 factors that we're going to use, the 2 numbers, are going to be 3 and 6. So they'll go in the back. And so we're going to check our outside, inside. That will give me 6a and 3a. And if I subtract, that will leave me with 3a. My 3 is negative. So that must mean I need a negative 6 and a positive 3. Because keep in mind with subtraction, we have different signs. So our answer is a plus 3 times a minus 6. Number 4, we have x squared minus x minus 42. So you do know that's the understood negative 1, and that's what we're trying to get, is that negative 1. And we are subtracting to get it. And that also means in order to subtract, we got different signs. So we got our 2 parentheses, and we're going to put x's at the front. And then factors of 42, we're going to use 6 and 7. And I'm going to check my outside, inside, 7x, 6x. If I subtract, that will leave me with a 1. My 1 is negative, so we got to make sure that the 7 carries the negative and our 6 is positive. So our answer would be x plus 6 times x minus 7. And keep in mind, again, it does not matter which parenthesis is first. Number 5, 15h squared plus 11hg minus 14g squared. And keep in mind, I've asked you guys to make sure you don't have a GCF. If you do, you would take it out first. But when I look at 15, 11, and 14, I don't have a number in common. So we're going to write our two parentheses. And keep in mind, you're trying to get that 11hg. And we are subtracting to do so. And you're going to have different signs. So I'm going to go ahead and stick my H's in the front because that comes from the front. And I'm going to go ahead and stick my G's in the back. Now, granted, I'm going to put some numbers in there, but I'm going to go ahead and stick my variables in there so I won't forget them. Now, when I look at 15, you got 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. And when we look at 14, you got 1 and 14 and 2 and 7. And we're trying to subtract to get 11. So if we were to use 5 and 3 in the front, then we would use 2 and 7 in the back. And we're going to check to make sure that will give us an 11. So on the outside, that would give me 10hg. On the inside, that's 21hg. And if you subtract 21 and 10, that will give you an 11hg. So 11 is positive. So that means 21 has to carry that positive. And 21 is not sitting up there directly, but you made 21 with the middle, with this 7 and 3. So that 7 will be positive, and you made 10 with 5 times the 2. So our answer would be 5h plus 7g times 3h minus 2g. Number 6, 64 x squared plus 48 xy plus 9y squared. So I look at all three numbers and I don't have a GCF. And so I'm going to just factor. We're going to get that middle of 48. And I am adding, writing too fast, to get 48. So we're going to, now there's a lot of factors you probably think of 64. And I want you to look at something that we didn't really mention in class, but 64 and 9 are both perfect squares. So use the square roots to see if they will work first, okay? Sometimes that works when we're adding. So I know the square root of 64 is 8. So I'm going to use 8x and 8x. That's the factor pair I'm going to use. And the square root of 9 is 3. So I got 3y and 3y. So I'm going to use those factor pairs to see if this will give me my middle. So 8x times 3y gives me 24xy. And I have the same thing on the inside, 8x and 3y, which is another 24xy. Now, if you add that up, that would give me 48. So 48 is positive, so that means everyone has to be positive. So it looks like you have the exact same parenthesis twice. And you have, that's 8x plus 3y times 8x plus 3y. You can give me that as an answer, or you can write that parenthesis 1 time squared. Now you use that square because you have the same parenthesis, the exact same. Now both of them got the same sign. That's the only way you can write it squared. Not that they got different signs. They got to have the same sign. So either one of these would be correct. Number 7, m to the 4th minus 81. So this is going to be kind of like the difference of squares because our middle is gone. And in the front of both parentheses, we're going to put m squared because we know that m squared and m squared make m to the 4th. You add them together in multiplication. And the square root of 81 is 9. 1 positive and 1 negative. Now, we talked about the plus being prime. You can't keep going with it. However, this one is still the difference of squares. That's still a perfect square number. So I can continue breaking down the m squared minus 9. We would put m's at the front, and the square root of 9 is 3, 1 positive and 1 negative. But we must bring down that m squared plus 9 to complete my answer. Number 8, we got w to the 3rd plus w squared plus 9w plus 9. Now this goes back to the very first thing we did in factoring in 6-1. We talked about GCF and grouping. This is considered grouping. You have 4 terms, and that's something to look for, is 4 terms, okay? And we're going to leave it the way it is. We're going to group the first 2, and then we'll group the last 2. So the GCF off the first 2 will be w squared, because both of them have at least 2 w's. And when you pull that off, you're left with w plus 1. You do know there's an understood 1 there. So if I take the w squares away, you're left with the 1, okay? So let me put that back, so I don't want you to be confused. Okay, on the second 2 terms, and we're going to be case sensitive, we're going to take off a positive 9. And that's going to leave us with w plus 1, because 9 divides into 9 1 time. And so our answer is going to be w plus 1 and w squared plus 9. Remember, that's grouping. Okay. Number 9, we have x squared minus xy plus y squared. So we know that's the understood negative 1 in the middle. And we are adding to get 1. And I want you to keep in mind that in front of your x squared and your y squared is just 1s. So if you were to take 1s and plug them in, you're not going to add up to get a 1. You're going to add up to get at least 2. Okay? So this is considered prime. You can't add up with just 1 to get a 1. So that one is prime. Okay. Number 10, 27 p to the 3rd plus 343 q to the 3rd. Now this is a cube problem, okay? So I've given you those yellow sheets, And you can use those. If you go look at 27, if you don't already know, the cube of 27 is 3. I bring down my p, I bring down my plus sign, and the cube of 343 is 7, and I bring down my q. That would be the roots of the problem. And then we're going to do square multiply square. And what that means is you're going to take the first term, which is 3p, and you're going to multiply it times itself. Multiply means you're going to take the first term and the second term and multiply it times itself. And then square the last term means you're going to take 7q and multiply it times itself. So if you take 3p and square it, that's 3p times 3p. That would give us 9p squared. So that's your first term. Multiply 3p times 7q. That would give you 21pq. And then 7q squared is 7q times 7q, which is 49q squared. Now, the rules say you can only have one negative. So if I did not give you a difference of cube problem, then your negative will only go on the middle. The last term will be positive. So our answer would be 3p plus 7q times 9p squared minus 21pq plus 49q squared. Number 11, 27, p to the 10th, minus 45, p to the 9th, minus 252, p to the 8th. So, obviously, I hope you notice this thing has a GCF. So, I would look at 27 and 45. They both have a 9 in common. And then I would look and see if 9 will divide into 252, and it does. So I would take off a 9, and then p to the 8th. And when we do that, 27 divided by 9 will leave you with 3. P squared, 10 minus 8 will give you 2. Minus 45 divided by 9 would give me 5. P, because 9 minus 8 is just 1. Minus 252 divided by 9 would give me 28 and no P's. And then I would see if this parenthesis will break down any further. So we're trying to get this negative 5p. And we are subtracting. So I'm going to do my 2 parentheses. Now in the front, I can't have anything but a 3p and a 1p. But with 28, we know we got 1 and 28, 2 and 14, and 4 and 7. So we're trying to subtract and get 5. So I'm going to use 4 and 7. So I'm going to put 4 here, 7 there. And I'm going to check my outside, inside. 3p times 4 is 12p. Inside is 7p. If I subtract, that will give me 5p. So my 5 is negative. So that means my 12 must be negative and my 7 is positive. Now, your complete answer must include that GCF of 9p to the 8th times 3p plus 7 times p minus 4. Make sure you don't forget to bring that GCF on down. Number 12, 5x to the 3rd minus 625. Now it looks like a cube problem, but if you look at your yellow sheet, 5 nor 625 is directly on the sheet. But I hope that you notice there's a GCF. So you would need to take off a GCF of 5, and that would leave you with x squared minus 125. Now you have a perfect cube problem. So we're going to do the roots, which will be x minus 5. And then we're going to do square, multiply together, square. Square, multiply, square. And what square means is you're going to multiply x times x. Multiply means you're going to multiply x times 5. And square, the last, means you're going to multiply 5 times 5. So that would give us x squared, 5x, and 25. Now, signage, you can only have one negative, and it's in the front parenthesis, so everything in the second one is plus plus. Now, you do remember I said that second parenthesis will not factor down any further, but you must make sure you bring down that GCF of 5 that you took off. So your complete answer would be 5 times x minus 5 times x squared plus 5x plus 25. We have 16x squared minus 81. This will be the difference of squares. So we're going to do the square root of 16 and the square root of 81, which will be 4x at the front, 9's at the back, 1 positive and 1 negative. 14, we have 25x squared plus 36. Now 25 and 36 are perfect, but we cannot do the sum. So 14 we know is going to be prime. We can't add up to get a 0 in the middle. 15, 8x squared plus 59xy plus 21y squared. I don't have a GCF, so we're going to factor. I'm trying to get 59, and I'm going to add to do so, and we know that means same sign. So we got our two parentheses. I will go ahead and stick my x's in the front, y's in the back, so we won't forget them. And when I look at 21, you got 1 and 21 and 3 and 7. And with 8, you got 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. So we're trying to get 59. So we're going to use 8x and 1x in the front. And we're going to use 7 and 3 in the back. So our outside, you're going to multiply 8 times 7, and that will give me 56xy. And you're going to multiply 3 times 1, which will give you 3xy. And if you add that together, that will give you 59xy. So we're adding, and 59 is positive, so that means both 56 and 3 must be positive. So our answer would be 8x plus 3y times x plus 7y. Number 16, we have 18r squared plus 12ry minus 3xr minus 2xy. Again, this is 4 terms. This is grouping. We're going to do grouping, okay? So the first two we're going to group together. The last two we're going to group together. So out of the first two, we're going to pull off a 6 and an R. That's going to leave us with 3R plus 2Y. Off the second two, you notice that both of the second two terms are negative. So we're going to pull off a negative, and they just have X in common. And that's going to leave us with 3R plus 2Y. Because keep in mind, when you take a negative off, you divide it out, you're left with a positive. So our answer would be 3R plus 2Y times 6R minus X. Now, the next 4 problems are set equal to 0. So you are to give me the 2 numbers that zero this thing out, okay? So we're going to factor, simple factoring. We are trying to get that negative 11, and we're adding to do so. So we got our 2 parentheses, X and X at the front, and then factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. And then the one that's going to add up to an 11 is 3 and 8. So we're going to put 3 and 8 at the back, and you're going to do outside, inside. 8x and 3x will give me an 11, but my 11 is negative, so we got to make sure that everyone, since we're adding, is negative. Now, that's just the factoring part. Now, you're going to take each parenthesis and set it equal to 0 to give me the opposite, which would be the number that zeroes it out. So we get positive 3 and positive 8. Those are the 2 answers to this. Just keep in mind, you want to know what will make that thing equal 0, which will obviously be the opposite. We got x squared plus x minus 20 equals 0. So we're trying to get that understood 1, and we are subtracting to do so. So we got x and x, 4 and 5. We're going to do outside, inside. That gives me 5x, 4x. That will subtract to a 1. My 1 is positive. So that means I must have a positive on my 5 and a negative on my 4, because when we are subtracting, we got different signs. So when you factor, you set each parenthesis to 0 to give me that opposite, which I know x must be 4 and x must be negative 5. Negative 5, comma 4 in curly cues. 3x squared minus 16x minus 12 equals 0. And we don't have a GCF, so we're trying to get negative 16. And we are subtracting to do so. And when we subtract, you know, you got to have different signs. So I'm going to do my 2 parentheses. In the front, we got 3x and x. Then back here with 12, you got 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. So we're going to use, we're trying to subtract and get 16. And so we're going to use 2 and 6. But my 6 must be in the parenthesis with 1x. 2 has to be in the parenthesis with 3x, because you can't put the same common factors in the same parenthesis. So you're going to check your outside, inside. That will give me 18 and 2. If I subtract, that will make 16. My 16 is negative, so I must have a negative 18, which will be made by the 6 times 3, and I have a positive 2. Now, that's just the factoring, though. I have it set equal to 0, so that means I want to know the two numbers that will zero this out, which is just the opposites. So on the first one, you're going to subtract 2 to get x by itself, and then we're going to divide by 3. So we get a negative 2/3, and then we get positive 6. And then number 20, m squared minus 144 equals 0. So this is a difference of square. We got m plus and minus 12. So if you set it to 0, you're just going to get each other, which is their opposite. So you're going to get a negative 12 and a positive 12. And that's your answer. So I went through each of the problems that's on the review sheet. Tests will be very similar to these 20 problems, and it will be separated in the same manner, meaning I will have all the factoring problems mixed up together like 1 through 16, and then I'll have 17 through 20 where you have to actually give me the number that zeroes out the equation.